Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hansen, joined by Matt Burtz.
How you doing?
Doing real good.
At the end of the month.
End of the month, man. It's been a full month of Dishonored 2 coverage. We've been rolling out features every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can go to GameInformer.com/Dishonored2 to see all that stuff. But at the tail end of every month, I'm sure people listening to this podcast know this format by now. We have a post, get a bunch of questions from the community, and in the best scenarios, ask the developers directly their burning questions. So on this episode, we have Harvey Smith, who is the creative director, co-creative director for Dishonored 2.
Co-creative director, yeah.
Co-creative director. There we go. He was also a co-creative director on Dishonored 1. Also worked on Deus Ex and was on the QA department for like System Shock 2 back in the day. So also Deus Ex's sequel.
Yep.
Yeah, he's been around and he knows a lot. And he's a very smart guy. So we're going to ask him a bunch of questions from the community. And here it is. Harvey Smith, welcome back to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Hey, thank you.
I look back and it's like you were on this podcast back in like August of 2011. So it's nice to have you back on, man.
Yeah, it's just so funny. I'm sitting here in France. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The river is this way. I'm in one of our conference rooms with stuff probably written on the board that we shouldn't show. There's Dishonored art. And I looked at my Instagram the other day, and I the first cover for the Dishonored when Victor and Raphael and I went out to your offices and talked to you, and we did a really nice cover with some art from Victor and Sebastian Mitton, our art director. And I looked at that on my Instagram feed. For some reason, I was scrolling way down through it, and I realized, like, holy cow, that was 2011. It's amazing. And of course, the game wasn't done yet. Dishonored 1 shipped in 2012, October or something, I think. But anyway, it just seems like a long time, but it's one project's worth of life cycle. And so I took another photo of the new Game Informer covers, the Corvo version and the Emily. I couldn't get to it. They were in a locked office here in our offices. So I took the picture through the window and I put those on my Instagram as well. And so just for symmetry, right, to have another one in the stream.
Nice. So we've got a bunch of questions from the community. Some are pretty nitty gritty. Some are a little bit more broad, but we're going to start out with a more broad one here. Authoress just wants to know, what are the biggest issues you had with the first game in retrospect, and how are they being addressed in the sequel?
Well, you know, we had we listened to the players a lot, and they had like a number of points where they wanted to see something slightly different, even the people who really, really love the game. And so we had things like that we've attacked on this project for, you know, we tried to do everything bigger and better for Dishonored 2, but some people felt the end games were too binary, so we've gone after that as a way to enhance the experience. So now I'm super conscious of what's on the whiteboard. I didn't look at it before the meeting, so I'm angling myself toward the river.
Perfect.
Safer. We didn't necessarily feel the game was too short, and most players did not. But once in a while, we heard from people who kind of raced through it, didn't play twice. They thought the game was too short, so we made this game a little longer. There were things that people responded positively to that we doubled down on. People liked the little urban areas just before the mission locations, so we extended some of those. With people felt like the city was not lifelike enough, so we added people fishing, people gambling, people going about their lives. Even though the Duke of Serkonos has kind of crushed the life out of the place, it's still a functional city. What else? A few things like that. We've done all the things we did before. Oh yeah, people really like. I don't know whether they're a subset of the players, but there were people who really like the non-lethal options, and they like not killing and sneaking, and so they wanted. Some people felt like killing was over-supported, and the other options were under-supported. To give you an example. You could drop from a height on someone, and that would break your fall, and you could assassinate them, drop, assassinate. So we added a drop non-lethal takedown, basically, which is fun. And we added combat choke. So in the middle of combat, you can like hit someone in the throat, and while they're off balance, flip them around and choke them unconscious. So basically, there's a set of probably 5 or 6 things that if you troll the forums, you'll see people mention like, hey, I love this game, but I wish blah, where we tried to go after those things.
Nice. So the number one question by far, a lot of people ask this, there's a lot of Dowd fans out there, and they're wondering if he's going to have a major role in this game or how you characterize his role in Dishonored 2.
Yeah, so Dowd, we say, was a character, or a minor character in the first game, who is the one who assassinated the Empress. And then we decided to use him as the protagonist in the DLC. However, at the end of the DLC, Corvo, in certain circumstances, spares him, and we imply that Dowd takes the money he's built up over the years from killing corrupt aristocrats and the like, and he disappears. He basically retires. And so, so there's nothing announced about Dowd at all.
Okay, gotcha. But you know that the fans really like him, right?
Yeah, we liked him too. And, just inside baseball here, but God, I hate sports metaphors. I don't know why I just said that. But it's such a useful term, even though I don't like baseball. But anyway, is that because we added a voice to the character for the DLC that made him more human? Is it because he was a villain who then you see a regretful side to, and that deepens him as a character? There's probably multiple answers, but it's really interesting. Why do people like Dowd? By the time we finished Dishonored, our artists and level designers really knew the tools, and the game designers really knew our systems and what our world was. Our lore people really knew the world, and so naturally the DLC, the Brigmore Witches and the Knife of Dunwall, they feel like a really hyper-polished version of Dishonored 1, in my opinion. Whenever I tell people, if you're on PC, go buy the Game of the Year version. If you're on console, go buy the Definitive Edition. It's not like at this point it's me pushing sales. The game's already financially successful by far. It's me saying, oh God, I really want more people to play our DLC because we really enjoyed making it, and we really like hearing from fans when they play it, because it does feel like the really like, okay, we went through this full round of development, which is like hide and seek the entire time for 3 years, right? And then you get to the end and you're like, aha, I know what this is. Now let's do it again, but in a shorter cycle, and in a way that's just super cool and gratifying, and the results are very good.
Yeah, definitely. DK wants to know if you'll be able to interact with the outsider besides just listening to him, like explaining ourselves when he questions our choices, for example.
There's some stuff that I can't get into. Let me just say, so no one's disappointed, we don't go full RPG with the outsider or anything like that. But we have an interesting interaction with him, more of his background, and some things I think that we're going to announce in the coming months that I think people are going to really like.
Okay.
He's a really polarizing character. It's interesting. Like the outsider is the kind of guy where you either love him or hate him.
Huh? Who hates him? Who are these people?
There are people that how do I say this? Really found him intriguing and mysterious. This kind of like character that offers you the chance to be abusive with power, and then is mildly disappointed when you take it, and who has a kind of ironic or sardonic kind of demeanor. And then there were other people that are like, they expected him to be more of a trickster god, which I don't think he is, or they don't like the semi-emo, semi-goth kind of quality of the character. I don't know, one of the reviewers said someone had read too much Neil Gaiman in the 90s or something, and it's like, hey, Neil Gaiman is awesome.
That was me, damn it. So part of making him more likable might tie into the next question here. Santam wants to know why you decided to change the voice actor for the outsider. Because now it's voiced by the guy who's the Penguin on Gotham, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Billy Lush did a great job the first time around, and Robin Lord Taylor does a great job this time around. And I think there are going to be people who prefer one or prefer the other, but they're both. The main thing to remember is that they're both true to the character. We're very character driven. We didn't bring somebody else in and say, "Hey, give us a completely different take on the character." We're just like, "This is the character. This is what we want him to sound like." And usually, without going into the specific details of any actor, usually when you work with actors, their schedules are nuts and our schedules are nuts. And when we're available and when we need the performance and how much time they have and how many times they need to come back in the future, because we did I don't remember how many recording sessions that we did for this project, but if you counted the throwaway sessions where we were just putting in placeholder voice, we did 5 or 6 sessions, I guess, and we work with the Blind Light out in Los Angeles. Those guys are friends, and they always do great work. But anyway, this often comes down to availability, schedule, logistics, and you do what you can, and you work with who you want to work with, and you can work with. And I'd be excited to hear the Billy Lush version of all of these lines, but at the same time, I'm also really excited about working with Robin Lord Taylor, whose performance as the Penguin on Gotham is fantastic. It's defining. I never liked the Penguin before, and now I love the Penguin. So we're very lucky in that regard. It's the same is true with Emily. We worked with Chloe Grace Moretz before. She played the young Emily, as we told you guys when you were in France. And now we work with Erica Luttrell as the adult Emily. And in both cases, it's like an embarrassment of riches, right? We're working with these incredibly talented people, and they're lending their voice to the game. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. So you touched on it a little bit earlier, but maybe you can kind of expand on it here. Serrana says, are there going to be more civilians just going about their business? I mean, I know we had the rat plague in Dunwall, and there are blood flies now in Karnaka, but I still think it'd be cool to have more people roaming around the city. And then Nintendufus has a similar question where he just asks, how have interactions with non-combative characters evolved for Dishonored 2?
Yeah, so quick answer is yes, there are many more people out having their lunch, sitting at the edge of the roof, or fishing off the dock, or gambling in an alley. And generally, if it's outdoors in a public space, they're okay with you being there. They might say a one-liner about their lives there, the Duke's edicts, or the way they're treated by the Grand Circonan Guard or whatever. Sometimes they have color commentary on other parts of the empire. Hey, I moved my family here from Morley when the great potato famine happened 15 years ago or whatever. There are lines like that. But if you're indoors and they see you, then of course they're hostile because you're not supposed to be there. You're trespassing. And if they see you fight or something, even outdoors, they sound the alarm. They run. So yes, if you're ghost-like and you play, you can just eavesdrop on people in many more kind of slice of life moments.
Nice. Flash has something tied into that then. He just wonders if they'll react if you use your supernatural powers in front of them. Will they get freaked out by it?
Yeah. Supernatural powers in our world are so rare that they're considered to be mythic. People are superstitious to the point where they walk around with carved whalebone in their pocket to, prevent pregnancy or to make sure the crops grow or whatever. But nobody's casting fireballs. It's not the Harry Potter world or whatever. And so whenever you do anything like that, even around a guard that's fighting you or civilian fishing or whatever, they say, what just happened, and they often freak out.
Gotcha. Hello Org wants to know, he says, lore-wise, can we expect to learn more about Pandacia or other parts of the world? Which is, we had a map back in the Dishonored 1 cover story that showed hey, there's this whole other continent. It's this giant unknown continent where you even mentioned maybe there's dinosaurs there. Who can say? And so he's just wondering if this will if Dishonored 2 will help kind of flesh out that world a little bit more.
Well, I can promise you there are not dinosaurs on the Pandacian continent. There's probably something much crazier than that. But it's intended to be like a place of mystery, like a place of legend that very few people have ever seen with their own eyes. And it occupies that space again in the world. So we allude to it off and on, and there are little audiographs and lore books where you can glean more about that sort of thing. And of course, we did as much or more narrative stuff. I work with Sashka Duval is the narrative designer on the game, and we've covered. I also work with Andreas Schmoll and some other people, and we've really. I would say there's a lot more lore this time, just scattered here and there. It's the same. It's not like it's denser or longer, but it's just. If you're looking for it, you can find a lot more detail about the rest of the Empire and the history of the Empire. Down to a detail that I will talk about here. When we did the first game, we didn't have a dating system. We had a calendar, I think with 13 months, with 28 days each. We did research on calendars. We came up with all the months. We realized we had made a mistake, so we corrected it at some point. One of the months was in the wrong place, all this esoteric stuff. But we didn't put a year on it. We just kind of said it's kind of like Europe around this time, Europe and parts of Eastern Europe around this time period, but we didn't put a date on it. And when you work on a game with this much like history and lore, you start to trip on yourself. And so for this game, we had to add a dating system. And I think the new game takes place in 1852. And I think we say the original game takes place in 1837 or something. And interestingly enough, that's the time in London when Spring Hill Jack was said to be seen. This kind of guy in a demonic mask leaping over buildings, magically landing in the alley and stabbing. The year that Spring Hill Jack was allegedly sighted in our world was the year that Corvo was marked by the outsider and was running around doing nutso stuff. And so the new game technically is 1852 in our sort of analog to Earth calendar. So there in a way it's the same treatment with new information about the lore, about other parts of the Isles and the history and the culture and all that. But you see a much deeper look at Serkonos and Karnaca, that location. But also it goes further than that, because even the underpinnings of it, we've had to think through a lot more. Like on Dishonored 1, we were just running as fast as we could. It's like Rafael Colantonio and I and the team in Lyon and Austin, we were just running as fast as we could and thinking things through and jotting them down and checking them briefly against things that we had said 6 months before or whatever, and trying to build a living document, as we went. But by the time we did the DLC, we were like, wait a second. What was Granny Rag's original name, and what was her husband's name, and where did they live, and where are they from? Because now we don't want to contradict that, and so continuity and lore just become like really labyrinthine after a while. But if you care about it, you document it and you work your way through it. And of course, we make mistakes every now and then, but like with the calendar that we had to correct. But yeah, it's one of the fun parts.
So what does that look like? Is it like an internal wiki? Or what does the lore Bible for Dishonored actually look like?
It's funny because it's all scattered out. Half of it's in my head or in Sashka's head. At the beginning of the project, I found this app that's like a calendar app that you can just smooth scroll. It's like a long vertical page where you can just like put a month in and something going on. And the idea, it's like a timeline software or something, right? And so the idea behind it is like, if you're doing a timeline for whatever reason, like a timeline of your life, this is the year my grandfather died, this is the year we had the party on the boat, whatever, you could do that. I guess that's what the guy made it for. And I actually exchanged Twitter messages with him because what I was trying to do is use it for our game. I was going to have it in my pocket all the time, this incredibly detailed, I take it out of my head and put it into this app. But I started hitting problems where, like, we have 13 months of 28 days, and they're called things like the month of high cold. And our calendar goes back 4,000 years into the past. And so I'd be on Twitter asking the guy questions, like, imagine I was making a Lord of the Rings documentary and I needed to, I was like asking him these elusive questions like that, trying to get him to add features or something. And it's not his fault at all. It was a cool timeline software, but obviously we were twisting it and hacking it, with what we wanted it to do. It didn't quite work. It would crash all the time, and I finally just gave up. And we now have a wiki on the network and some other documents like that.
Gotcha. So getting back to these questions a little bit, can you confirm that that Dishonored 2 is only in Dunwall and Sarkonos? Are those the only 2 locations there?
Well, and the Void. But
Sure.
yeah, for sure. You start in Dunwall and you travel to Karnaka.
Gotcha.
All right. Tonabakis has a question more about how you transition between missions. In the previous game, you would either travel with Samuel on his boat between locations or transition through loading screen doors. Is this the same for Dishonored 2, or are you guys doing something a little different?
It's largely a similar approach. We have talked, when we talked to you guys, we talked about the Dreadful Whale. And that's the player's base of operations between missions. And there's a skiff that the captain of the boat is named Megan Foster, and she takes you on a skiff between missions.
Okay. Federico Pastoressa says, I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on players not exploring the entire possibility space afforded by Dishonored's game systems. Do you see that as a design problem? Say, like, how can we push the player to think of this interaction? And if this is the case, how do you guys usually tackle it?
Yeah, if I understand the question correctly, it's our desire to make the game like that, where there's actually too much to explore in one playthrough. I think it drives people who are slightly compulsive. I think it drives them batty, but the whole point is to sense as you play through the world that you can't possibly see all of this. You can play again and see more and go a different path, but it really makes it feel like it's a rich environment. And instead of checking off the boxes, yes, I did room 1, 2, and 3 and killed the monster and got the treasure, and then did room 4, 5, and 6. It's more like you have this experience. You visited this place and you pass through it, and you can barely remember all the crazy stuff that happened along the way. But if you play it again, you see things that are exciting and novel. And so, yeah, it's a deliberate design decision on the part of our level design team and our systems teams to give you more powers than you can use or buy, and give you more spaces than you can see in one playthrough, and give you mutually exclusive character goals and things like that.
All right. Nick Straza has a question about Far Reach, one of Emily's supernatural powers. You've demonstrated it as having kind of rope mechanics, or you can latch onto something and move to that point. Does this mean you'll be able to swing around in a similar style to Spider-Man?
No, it's more of like a really fast, elastic grappling hook in a sense. So you can aim it at something and shoot past it if you do it right, or you can pull something toward you, but instead of catching it, let it move past you, like a whale oil tank if you want to blow up some guys at your back. But it has some properties like that, but it's not full on web slinging.
Okay. I Like Cake has a question about Emily's powers in the original trailer you showed at E3 last year. They thought Emily was using bend time. Does she have that power in the game?
In the trailer, Emily did use bend time, but that's a Corvo power.
Okay.
Was it an Emily power back then and you changed, or you just wanted to show off something that looked cool?
We went through many permutations of how we grouped or did not group the powers. I'll just put it that way.
Gotcha.
Okay. Void Worshipper says they're a huge Dishonored fan. I could tell by the name. They're wondering, are there any type of enemies that can match Emily and Corvo's abilities, like Dowd did versus Corvo?
Yeah, there are a few characters in the game who either, the Clockwork Soldiers are really hard to fight, especially if you're fighting 2 of them in a different way. There are some characters who have unusual properties either by something they carry or for some other reason. There's no one exactly like Dowd, but anything more than that would be kind of spoilers, I guess.
Gotcha.
All right. Speaking of Clockwork Soldiers, Forrest is wondering if it's possible to non-lethally take them down.
Well, first of all, they're just machines, so they don't count against any kind of like kill count or anything like that. That said, you can do things like tear their heads off. You can drop attack them and tear their heads off, and that takes away their ability to perceive you. They're only operating by sound at that point, so they're fun like that too. And you can either deal with them in a way that's loud and messy, or deal with them in a way that's quiet. But yeah, there's no lethal, non-lethal to the Clockworks because they're just machines.
Okay. We delved into this a little bit in the cover story, but Branderson wants a little bit more of an explanation of what changes are coming to the Chaos system.
Yeah. Oh, that's probably a lot to get into here. We have we have in games now, more in games that are based on branches, based on your actions in the world, like who you supported or didn't support, or killed or didn't kill. And then we have optimistic or cynical, I would say, versions of each of those, depending on chaos. So chaos factors in that way. It also factors into how many blood fly infestations there are across the city, how thick the Grand Guard is in some places, some voice lines here and there, and the sort of tonal reaction, emotional reaction of the protagonists. Stephen Russell and Erica Luttrell play Corvo Atano and Emily Caldwin, and their lines sometimes change based on that. But further, not to go full nerd here, but we track 3 different states of chaos: low chaos, high chaos, and very high chaos. And we dynamically allocate at the start of the game for each mission. We dynamically allocate a morality to the characters around you. Most of them are like they were before, what we would call guilty, and they're worth a certain amount of chaos. A smaller set are sympathetic, and they're worth more chaos because you figure they're doing good in the world. And a smaller set are murderous, and they're worth less chaos because some people just need killing. They're characters like that. And so it's a more nuanced approach. It's in response to player feedback, and yet at the same time we hold on to our values, just saying, yes, if you your way through the world, you ghost your way through the world, you're less disruptive than if you murder everybody down the street. That's our approach this time.
And you can use the heart to kind of identify where they fall on a chaos spectrum, like get a rough feeling for that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You can pull out the heart and hear whispers about different characters again. We've really deepened that. Was something that Sashka Duvall and I and Dinga Bakava, we all early on said, yeah, let's make sure the heart is better supported this time than it was last time because people really liked it. And it's this weird thing where Corvo was running around with the heart of his former lover, and Emily's running around with her mother's heart turned into a mystic artifact. So that's the implication, at least, right? And so it's a strange dark magic kind of thing. But we had people in the first game playing the entire game deciding who to kill or not based on what the heart said about them,
Huh.
And so this time that's like more literally can be true, like you can sort of gather information about the character, their morality or their worth as a human being by pointing the heart at them and listening.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
So Master Assassin 51 has a question. How do you obtain new or enhanced abilities in Dishonored 2? Is it the same rune system as the last game, or have you tweaked it?
Yeah, so we once again have you get marked by the outsider, and you collect runes, and you spend those runes on powers. But instead of just buying a power and upgrading a power, you can buy a power and now upgrade it with various trees. So each power, Corvo's old powers from the first game, and Emily's new powers all have different ways to be upgraded.
All right. Lucifer McComb has a question about the health and mana systems. Do you still have Sokolov's elixir and Piero's spiritual remedy, or are there different serums used in Serkonos?
Well, we imply that at the end of the first game, Anton Sokolov and Piero Joplin cured the plague. And so there's a new formula in the world that's a health elixir called S&J health elixir for Sokolov and Joplin. And meanwhile, down in Serkonos, there's a popular brand of elixir that people are drinking that has a new name. It's from a new place, and it's tied into what's going on in the world.
Okay. Dishonored has a question about bone charm crafting system. They heard a rumor that there was going to be one in the game, but we haven't really written anything about that. So did that idea get axed, or is it still happening?
That idea is still happening. It's pretty exciting, and we'll talk about it more in the near future, I guess.
Gotcha. Serranus asked another question saying the first game was entirely experienced through Corvo's eyes, even the cutscenes. Is it still going to be the case with Dishonored 2, or will we see our heroes from different angles in cutscenes?
It's still from the perspective of the character.
Do you feel like that's really important for the genres to never break that?
For us, it was important. I think in Deus Ex, obviously, we did a strength too. So I think there are many different ways you could go. It's like I said about the voice protagonist. You can make a perfectly good game with a silent protagonist, depending on how you do it. There are strengths and weaknesses to almost all of these approaches, and I think more in our case, it was more like a consistency thing,
Gotcha. Dropkicked wants to know if he'll be able to have multiple save files or to have multiple playthroughs. Can he have one with Corvo and one with Emily, and then jump back and forth, or do we have to erase all our previous save data and restart all over to play as a different character?
Well, I would hate to answer this incorrectly and be wrong later, but I'm pretty sure our save games just work like save games. If you're playing as Corvo and you save your game, it's a file that just sits there. And if you restart a new game and you play as Emily and you save a separate file and they're sitting side by side, you can load up and play as Corvo or load up and play as Emily.
That'd be interesting to inch along level by level with each character to contrast and compare them. I'm sure fans are going to do that, man.
I haven't heard anybody talk about that, but that's like it's the parallel playthrough. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So there was a whole theme to a bunch of questions, and I'm wondering maybe you know where this is coming from, but a lot of people are asking about Emily's sexuality. Is this something that's relevant to the game at all?
Well, it's relevant in the sense that I've said we wanted to be more representative, have better representation this time, right? It's assumed that the empire is a melting pot to begin with, different cultures and different waves of settlers that have come in at different points. And so ethnically, racially, we've tried to be more interesting. We've tried to put people into key roles who are people of color, and to be more reflective of the way the world works and just to be less homogenous. So we've definitely gone after that. And also we have at least a few characters who, if you dig into them, you realize that they're not straight. That said, it's a quick-paced action game, or it's a slow-paced stealth game, where those things are secondary, right? And when we handle something like that, we just kind of like to have it in the world, not draw a big sign around it and say, hey, this guy's gay. But there is a gay character, there's a bi character, so I think we're better in terms of representation in that sense, and we try to handle those things well. Even though, again, the focus of the game is action, stealth, and exploring this big, deep world. And I don't think we come down strongly one way or the other about Emily's sexuality specifically. But once I was aware that people care about that, I also tried not to do anything that precluded their interpretation of the character, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Tone Bacchus writes in again and says, will Dishonored 2 have mod support? Or what's the team's thoughts on modding the game?
We haven't announced anything about mod support at this point.
Gotcha. But Bethesda seems to be thumbs up on mods in general. Webo says, how many possible endings can players expect? Are you even planning on having multiple endings this time around?
It's actually really hard to talk about because it's a permutation system. So there are several different pieces of the ending that play, and each one of those have, like, in some cases 2 states, in some cases 5 states, in some cases maybe a couple more than that. And then all of them have high-low chaos variations. And in a couple of spots, very high chaos permutations. And so, like, man, talking about the number of endings, giving you a number, it's almost not relevant. It's just better to say there are multiple ways the game can resolve itself based on how you play, both in terms of what you do and in terms of how violent you are.
Yeah, I think that answers it. A lot of people wrote in and asked this. ALMIO writes in and says, will there be whiskey and cigars in this game?
Yeah, I guess there's whiskey and cigars, especially whiskey in Dunwall. But we always said that, like, most of the best cigars came from Serkonos anyway. So a lot of characters smoke cigars in Karnaca. You'll see that soon, I think. And we have rum. More rum is consumed down in Serkonos for sure.
Okay, gotcha. Here's a think piece for you, Harvey. Then Tom was like, writes in and says, if you had an unlimited budget, what kind of game would you aspire to make?
Well, currently one like Dishonored 2 for sure, actually. In the future, I'm a big fan of VR, of course, but also I'm really into the idea of procedural content. So I don't know. Currently the answer is Dishonored 2 for sure. Not that we had an unlimited budget, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Are you following No Man's Sky pretty closely then?
Yeah. That's an exciting project. I'm really looking forward to that. There's a lot of AAA games that I am waiting to play because I've been so busy. And there's a lot of indie games that I'm either waiting for them to come out or I've stockpiled them to play later. You might know Adam Saltzman's games. He made Cannibalt and some other stuff, and his game Overland is in development right now, and I'm really excited about that. I'm excited about No Man's Sky, but I still have Far Cry Primal to play, and I've really been putting off the big Fallout 4 DLC, Far Harbor, and because I knew from development that the make your own robot stuff was coming as well, and so I put it off to play until I could play with that as well. So I'm just going to have like a big 100-hour pizza party at the end of Dishonored 2 so I can play Fallout 4 and Far Harbor and all that stuff.
Nice. Take a break from games.
The other games I mentioned as well.
Yeah, for sure. Take a break from game development and just go soak yourself in video games again.
Totally.
It's got to be refreshing. Are you guys feeling good? You coming up on the end of the project here?
We're closer to the end than the beginning. I'll put it that way. And we feel really good. We're excited about the game. We hope people love it as much as we do.
Right on. We wanted to ask you, is there anything through our coverage or anything you want to clear up? Any thoughts or reactions that stood out to you?
It's interesting, when people hear the stories, the anecdotes that you guys told. Did you cover the thing about Domino that Dinga did on the second playthrough?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you talk about that at all? You did. Okay. Yeah. So where on a whim he deviated from the normal playthrough path, not so far geographically. He could have gone a completely different direction, but he did things differently and came upon an execution scene where some overseers are executing heretics and used domino. It never had occurred to us before, but he linked the guy with the pistol about to shoot the guy in front of the firing squad so that like he would actually kill himself in executing this other guy. And it's, just reading people's comments as they kind of go through all of that stuff and discover and where they read between the lines and where they're right and where they're not right. And all that is really interesting. Having the response to the art, of course, is fantastic. And of course, you can see how the game looks. Some people were not able to tell which pieces were concept art and which ones are screenshot, but you can't hear how great the game sounds. Like the music that we have, and the audio effects and the room tones and the atmospherics and all. Just like every day now, it's taking these huge leaps forward in terms of just atmospherics with the lighting and the audio. At the end, and we're making lots of level design tweaks based on playtest feedback, and so yeah, it's there's a lot I learned, I guess, by looking at the coverage.
There are a lot of comments that are eager to see gameplay. I'm sure you saw that, and so is it safe to say at E3 people will get to see this game in action finally?
Yeah, E3 should be pretty exciting, but we haven't announced anything yet.
Okay. Gotcha. Anything else you want to say or ask, Birds?
No, I think we've covered a lot. Thank you so much for taking the time to, chat with us and answer some of the fan questions.
Yeah, the community appreciates, man. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, I mean, every time I talk to somebody like you guys, I feel like I should insist that you fly here just so I have more native English speakers to hang out with and talk to. But this is the easier way to do it for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you get immersed in the great LA scene pretty soon at E3, so it'll take care of that for you. Cool. Well, again, Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next Thursday, and we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.